All right, everybody. Like Casey said, welcome. This is the last session. You made it. Virtual machines. It's something that I'm very passionate about. I got the chance to spend about 7.5 years in R&D doing software development at National Instruments. And if you've ever seen a presentation from me, you know that I always start with a joke, and it's, how many of you have ever used the DAC Assistant? A handful of you guys. So I owned the DAC Assistant for about 5 years, and I always joke that all the good stuff, that's me. All the bad stuff, that's somebody else. It's not true. I've programmed my fair share of bugs. But one of the tools that was introduced into my tool belt while doing professional software development at NI was the concept of a virtual machine. And when I first was introduced to it, I was like, what do you mean a virtual machine? Why would I ever use it? So maybe some of you all in the room are in that spot, which this is the right spot for you. We certainly want to give you an introduction to what is a virtual machine, how can it help you in your software development processes. Maybe you've been using virtual machines for a little while, or even maybe you're pretty much an expert. We've also got a couple of questions designed to maybe address some advanced use cases. But like Casey said, we also want this to very much be a dialogue. So if anybody has questions, you're going to get to see me run into the audience and hand off the microphone to ask to our panelists. And I'm going to try and guide and direct conversation up here so that we all in the room learn. So that having been said, let me just get a show of hands real quick. How many of you guys feel like you've heard of virtual machines before, but you really kind of at a novice level? All right, good. So that's about half the folks in the room. I did it. That's totally cool. So actually, our opening question, I'm really big on definitions. So I'm going to ask, before we... I was just going to say, before I jump in, who's sitting on our panel?
Good segue, good segue.
Yeah. So, panelist, if you would, name where you work, kind of what you do, and then your experience level with virtual machines. Sound good?
I'm Dmitry Sagatrelia. I use LabVIEW since 1998, which was LabVIEW 5.0. Currently, I'm a LabVIEW consultant in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I started using virtual machines in 2010. I was really enthusiastic about it. But after years passed, it turns out that there are some expenses involved, including your time and some money. So I'm using them less, only when necessary.
I'm Matthias Bolo. I am using LabVIEW since LabVIEW 7. I work at StudioBots. I'm using virtual machines since 4 years, probably. And I could actually build them.
Hi, I'm Jim Crane. I use virtual machines all the time on my laptop, in the cloud, and I really got into virtual machines back in the early, well, not early days, but early Mac days, like maybe around 2006 or so, when the first Macs came out, and as a way to kind of try to run LabVIEW on that. And yeah, I found it hard because it wasn't an x86 architecture back then, so it was really slow. But it got better once they switched to x86.
Kevin Hall, NI. 10 years now. I used to run Chris's builds and had to fix his stuff all the time. Been using virtual machines pretty much the whole time. We got Chris on board early on when that was, but I usually have about 4 or 5 virtual machines running at a single time, about 4 terabytes of saving last time I counted.
Hi, I'm Missy Stoltz. I work for Roses and an Alliance member. I started in AE with Chris over there, and I started using some ghosting when I worked for the calibration executive group, trying to test installers, but it was really painful. And moving to Roses, my group was about the first to use VMs, and now I can't imagine doing any work without them. So we use them quite a bit.
Hello, Steve Watts. I think I'm sat in the wrong place. SSDC, I've been using quite a long time. Yeah, we use virtual machines. I would no way say I'm an expert though. But we've got a couple of interesting use cases which we haven't had.
Hi, I'm Alan Smith. I've been using LabVIEW since 2052, so I'm old. Did a stint at NI recently on my own, so I'm for sale. I'm a consultant, self-employed consultant at this point. My first encounter with virtual machines was a couple of years ago when I was doing some work for LabVIEW R&D, and Darren Nagby said, "Hey, here's my VM with like the entire software suite on it." And I went, "Oh my god, this is amazing." And I actually just recently, finally, after I've used other people's for several years, I just recently finally stood up one of my own, which was painful for the first time and probably completely painless here going forward. So yes, I'm probably on the newer end of the spectrum on this panel, so maybe I can offer insights on recent experience. Thank you.
All right, thanks guys. So my first question can be answered lots of different ways. We begin like definitions, and so the first question is, what is a virtual machine? There's lots of different ways that can be answered, from the functional to the value proposition statement to everything in between. So let me get 4 of you guys, whichever 4 you would like, pass around the microphone and take your swing at answering what is a virtual machine. Who would like to go first?
For me, a virtual machine is a computer machine, more generally, that you can use and run without having a dedicated hardware to it. That's interesting.
Okay, so happened that I did a presentation on virtual machines back in 2009 at the Bay Area LabVIEW user group. And I found this slide when Chris asked me to be on the panel. So I got the definitions. There are 2 types of virtual machines: a system virtual machine, that's what we're talking about today. And they are intended for sharing underlying hardware resources between multiple copies of the OS. And the process virtual machine, strictly speaking, is something that we know as like a Java VM, LabVIEW Runtime, or .NET VM.
Yeah, so I think about it at a pretty high level. Like, you have an iPhone, you've got a laptop, and, it consists of a bunch of, computational resources, user input resources, and it has ways of talking outside of itself through serial ports and things like that. And so a virtual machine is basically software that sort of provides an environment for applications to run inside of that type of computer, but virtually. And then that virtual machine runs on some different hardware that then provides, sort of a host for that to run, and ways of maybe even adapting the virtual machine's ports, like a serial port for a virtual machine might actually be connected to a USB serial on your host machine or something.
So more of a functional definition as opposed to some of the technical definitions we've gotten here. So a virtual machine is a sandbox. It's an application that pretends to be your computer, and you can run whatever you need to run. You can stand up whatever you need to stand up. You have a lot more control over. You can install just what you need, no more, no less, and that can be different from whatever your base regular work environment is. You can share it around, which is really awesome. It's a handy way to say, here's everything I've done. And if WannaCry attacks your computer, you throw it away and you're not out anything. So they're pretty good from that perspective. If you're playing with it, even remotely of concern. You screw it up, it's no big deal. You go run off another one.
Just to reiterate your statement, let's say you get that virus and you see the way you use it, as long, and this is very important, as long as your file storage is external to the virtual machine.
Right, exactly. Anything, if you lose anything that was there, anything that was a part of the virtual machine, lost. And of course you want to I'm not a security expert, so I'm not saying that you can save from WannaCry if it showed up. I was trying to be a little humorous there, just to make the point. But if you're sufficiently isolated, if your virtual machine is sufficiently isolated from your actual workspace, or permanent, actual physical hard disk storage that you care about, then yeah, they're pretty disposable. You're out whatever work you've done on it, but no more than that. So it's a great way to contain anything risky. Data software. Yeah, actually, I'll probably from now on be installing all of my datas on virtual machines instead of putting them on my actual machine that I need to make a living with.
So this actually leads me to my next question, and you guys have kind of touched on this in a bunch of different ways, but what problems has a virtual machine solved for you? All of them? All of them?
A couple things, like I mentioned, jokingly but not jokingly, beta software, keeping things separate, being able to separate versions of LabVIEW, versions of other vendor software so that you don't have cross-contamination. I've also used it we use it a lot to give the environment that we're working on to another engineer we're working with. So I'm working on a LabVIEW project that has how many toolkits installed, how many different drivers installed, and how long did that take me to build up. I can just take a copy of it and give it to my coworker, and he can start where I left off, or we can collaborate, pull source code control, and get to the same point I am. And then I also have a snapshot of where the code is that I don't have to, when I come back to do support for a customer, I can turn off the machine, leave it alone. It's exactly where I left it off with all the versions that's going to need to upgrade. I know exactly where it was, and it's what the customer has. And I can pull it up and do whatever debugging and know that I have this VM for this customer, this VM for that customer, and they can't cross-pollinate.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Do you put them in a source code control then?
So they are huge files.
How huge is huge?
They're huge. How many gigs and gigs?
Huge.
Every allocated for it on the hard drive. 40 gigs or more, right?
Yeah, 40, at least 40 gigs. Exactly. It is more of
Talking about archiving on.
yes.
For guys. Okay.
So we also keep the VM separate from our backup, some of our backup tools, because we don't want to. We have a storage location for some of the installers of like third party. So we have all of our installers in one place for everyone. That's where we put some of our VMs that are used as a base. And so all of your development code is in source code control, but we will copy a blank, or like I've installed LabVIEW 2009 for a specific customer, and all these packages, I will make a copy and put it up on the server. And then I have my copy on my hard drive, and then probably somebody else has to do at least.
So they're backed up.
They are backed up, but not as nicely as source code control.
So just to be clear, it sounds like you have an instance of your operating system, this virtualized machine running, and you customized it, you installed all the software, you put on all your system environment variables, whatever, and you were able to somehow represent that as a file or a set of files that you could then pass off to somebody else, anybody else, and they could just point their version of VMware or whatever to that set of files, and poof, they can open up the computer. And it sounds like you can have n instances of that computer. You're in effect making copies.
And with that, be careful. Make sure that you are going to change the name of the computers. That's a good just practice of, because they are computers, they're OSs. And so when you're making those copies, depending on what you're working with, so we have some of our software that we use has licensing through a server. So you want to rename your computers, because then you don't know who's stolen that or has turned off the VM and has a license that is just kind of trapped and they didn't return. You can look at the computer name. If everybody has the same LV 2000 or 12 or whatever, it's the same computer name, you can't go bother that person that should have turned in your.
So you need to manage your TCP the IP addresses in their network. Because when you clone them, they tend to get the same. Well, MAC addresses is more like for licensing purposes. So you can create groups of virtual machines if you have a complex test environment, and they can work through virtual networks, but then you need to manage the names and the TCP IP addresses. And Jim mentioned MAC addresses, like Windows licenses are typically linked to a MAC address of your network card or something on your hard drive, something else. And if you clone a machine and it gets a different MAC address, you may need to call by yourself, or you may need to have a site-wide license.
One of the nice things on the VM is that you can. I have a lot of VMs that are just short-term testing VMs. Actually, I never activate them. I don't buy a license for them. You have 30 days, and when you snapshot back, when you revert to a snapshot, you get a new 30 days. So if you don't choose versions that need activation, all those machines you won't activate them. Another benefit.
These are powers for good and not for evil.
Nobody from Microsoft.
It's not just Microsoft.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. There is a 7 days and you can extend it all further. I'm working with VM server, so they never run pretty much on my laptop. Only when I move out from the office and I need them, I just convert them and put them on the laptop. I found out that the performances are a lot faster than a regular physical hardware. Virtualization increases performance.
Hey Chris, I had a question about licenses and number of copies, and I talked to NI about it. And they said that if you're doing virtual machines and they get, activation reports, but they will accept that people are developing with virtual machines, and they'll contact you if you get up to a certain number of activations, just to, make sure that you know that they know that.
Big Brother's watching. Yeah.
So the normal is you get 3 activations, but I was told that they've had people do 40 or more.
So has anyone ever been contacted by NI for activating?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Just a test.
Let's go on to that.
Wanted to ask, what do you consider the costs of having the virtual machine? I mean, we're talking about Windows licenses, LabVIEW licenses. How do you justify that cost of having that virtual machine that you use once a year versus having it installed on a physical machine?
So,
it doesn't have any real cost.
We don't spend any money on virtual machine. VirtualBox is free. When you have Windows licenses sculling around generally, so they always work. I don't know. I don't think I've ever specifically paid anything extra to run a virtual machine.
I've had to improve the, I've had to add the amount of RAM because I was trying to run multiple VMs at the same time, and things getting really slow. But that for me also needing larger hard drive space to be able to have copies of this, or to having a solid state drive makes them boot up so much faster and it shut down so much faster. So there is some hardware cost associated with it, but as far as and I can maybe answer this question later about MSDN licensing and
Just to finish all the cost, so as I said, I run virtual machine on a server, so I have a dedicated server, and of course it has a cost in terms of hardware. So that server can run 30, 40 virtual machines at the same time. To give you an idea, I invested almost $20,000 in that. It's all SSD.
They reside on that computer, but you cannot run 40 at the same time.
I can run 40 at the same time.
So I'll just mention to you, there are lots of online services that will host virtual machines in the cloud. There's like several.
Which one?
Rackspace Cloud, Amazon, Azure for Microsoft. There's a variety of them.
cheap.
Yeah, and you basically just pay for like the amount of RAM that they're using and if they're on or off and back it up and all that stuff fun too. So I was going to mention an engineering use case that we had. So we went in to work on an old system that we had to upgrade a bunch of hardware, and it had a really old control system. It was a pile driver tester and had cameras and data acquisition, and the cables were getting frayed, falling apart. There was only one in the world. And the way that you would get data off of this is you would put the serial port, and then there was one guy who was about to retire, and he had the Windows 95 machine that you needed to connect to this thing to run the DOS program to pull the data off of it. And his computer, when you reboot it, the CMOS battery was dead, and so you would constantly have to go into the BIOS every time you rebooted it to set the right settings so that it could start up. Anyways, to make a long story short, they didn't like that. And so what we ended up doing for them is we replaced their data acquisition system, but we still needed to do kind of testing in parallel for a period of about a year to make sure that we were doing apples to apples during the migration. And so the problem was these DOS programs that we needed to transfer data off the old system wouldn't work in Windows 7 for whatever reason. And so what we ended up doing is we went and got a virtual machine running an old version like Windows 3.1 DOS, found the programs, copied them over, got the environment working, and then actually I was like really surprised that this worked, but it required to talk out the serial port, and on this virtual machine running an old DOS operating system, we mapped the USB serial port that was on the modern laptop to the serial port of this old DOS computer, and it was able to pull the data off of this machine. And then we set it up so that it would map the hard disk of the DOS machine into a folder on their host machine on Windows 7, and so they could easily spin this up, do that, and then just get the data in Windows.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, and so that was a good example of basically being able to replace some old obsolete hardware and then now run it in a virtualized environment.
So somebody had a question up front. Again, John, would you jump in?
I was wondering, related to resources that virtual machine uses for hardware, and like you are using a server, multiple VMs. I'm wondering, for a LabVIEW development environment to have a reasonable performance, how much resources do you give it off of the machine? Do you give it, like 8 gigs of RAM, 16 gigs of RAM? How many courses do you give it? How much hard disk space? Where's the sweet spot for that?
Let me repeat the question. So just in summary, if I'm a LabVIEW developer using the LabVIEW development environment, what kind of resources should I give to a virtual machine in terms of hard drive space and RAM in order to optimize performance?
So again, with virtualization, it feels that the performances are increased with the same resources as we have. Usually I give 4 gig of RAM, 2 cores of CPU, 60 gig of hard drive, but you can basically, it's using, you don't have to allocate the entire 60 gig, which will use that. Yeah, there is some, but I find it works really well, this kind of setup. Basically, it's going to use only what it needs. So you can allocate 4 cores to all your machines. It's going to enhance the resources automatically.
Is that true for all laptop-based ones, or is it just the server side? I know on servers we do have antivirus.
Yeah, resource pools and.
But does like VMware Fusion on Mac automatically grab one course as needed to get back to Mac OS as it's done?
I don't. Yeah, definitely. You cannot run 2 virtual machines on your laptop. It's going to be painful. I mean, it's going to be painful.
Okay.
Actually,
Yeah, you can, but it's not fun.
This is one
one of the exotic applications.
How much do you pay for it?
I have 16 gigs of RAM. So I have 16 gigs of RAM. That was what I had to do, was go to a 64-bit OS. My laptop's a standard, a standard work laptop as opposed to a small. It's not a small laptop, but the 16 gigs of RAM, I'm normally running about 4. Most of my virtual machines are 32-bit Windows, so their own 4 is all they're going to. 3.5 is all they're going to use anyway. So I tend to be okay with that. The hard drive space is usually my problem because I copied them on my hard drive too many times with different states, but I should be using more snapshots than I do.
Yeah, question from?
Sort of already half answered, but I was going to say, what's the minimum spec for a virtual machine post PC?
Oh, I would say 16 gig.
Well, for that physical machine.
The physical, yeah.
What would you guys recommend?
As much as you can get.
Yes, more.
Well, it depends how many you can run.
Yeah.
If you're a developer, you won't be running 2 or 3.
Like in i5, i7, make any difference, dual core, quad core, just the better.
From my perspective, more cores is more better.
Well, and these are quite cheap decisions as well, comparatively. You know, the RAM, the hard drive. I mean, I wouldn't worry your head thinking about it too much because you only need half a day's of inconvenience. It's going to cost you an awful lot of money compared to a bit of RAM and a bit of hard drive.
Try it on your current laptop, and then if you find that it's too slow, get a faster laptop, and then copy the virtual machine over to the new laptop.
That's perfect.
I also quite like developing in a constrained environment. Because quite often your customer's not going to have a whizzy bang machine that can run everything in the whole world.
The largest SSD you can afford would probably also be a really good investment. I've seen significant changes between solid-state drives. Mine are off of, the ones I've used have been off external USB 3 drives. And so far so good. Well, yeah, you can do a 3.0. So you go external drive, 3.0, USB, standard, and that seems to work pretty well. But the biggest one you can afford.
I want to follow up on we're talking about hardware costs, but in my experience, those costs were not like huge. You buy your hardware once, and then you have to spend time maintaining multiple virtual machines. What this means, you need to get into the nitty-gritty of the licensing. You need to get into the Windows updates, because you don't want to automatically update your development environment, right? And as a way of doing it, you would create a hierarchy of virtual machines, different snapshots, different VMs, one with the latest Windows, then you add your development tools, second linked version, then you install LabVIEW 2015, then you make a copy of the tools machine into LabVIEW 2016, and you still need to update all the, make all the Windows updates to all those copies, keep them current. So somebody has to maintain that, and that becomes a major expense.
So, real quick, they just mentioned the concept of a snapshot. I just want to clarify that for folks who may or may not be familiar with that concept. You have the idea of your virtual machine that's running. Since it's simulated with software, you can actually take a picture, if you will, a snapshot of the state of that machine, and always revert back to it. Actually, this is it. So this is the same virtual machine saved in different states. So maybe there's one installation of Windows in one of those, and maybe the next installation has, or the next version has LabVIEW 2014.
Can I speak to what's going on here? So this is one virtual machine. It's my Windows 10 machine. And then I also have a Windows 7 machine. So this one here, what I did is I installed Windows, got a bunch of Windows updates. I ended up going back here to do some work, and then naturally there were a bunch of Windows updates, parallels needed to install the latest virtual machine tools. It took maybe 10, 20 minutes. I then snapshotted it so I don't have to do that bit again if I come back here.
And then what I did is I was installing LabVIEW 2016 when it came out, so I had to install .NET. I snapshotted it after I did that. Then I installed 2016, did some iMac, was doing some customer work. Here's another one where updates happened on top of that. And so what I'll do is I'll kind of manage this leading edge and then trim them down over time. Like I can actually delete that snapshot and then it'll kind of roll it in forward, roll it into these other ones. And then here I was doing some work actually on the migration of the OpenD stuff to LabVIEW NXG. So I had a snapshot here where I actually had an NXG 1.0 plus a special version of like 2.0 that I was using in parallel. And here I have a parallel branch with the LabVIEW NXG 2.1 beta kind of in isolation. And this is really nice because literally if I want to switch back and forth, I just double click. It says you want to go there. Yeah, it doesn't take that long. You can see it's already like 98% of the way there. Down there.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and so, you know, then if I want to go here, I can just double click there and say, okay, I want to go there. It warned me that if I've done work and I just switch and I haven't snapshotted, that I'm going to lose anything that I've done. Or I could just make a snapshot there. So this is parallels. They're all, it's one file. So I don't necessarily have the same options you do in VMware about whether it's a linked clone or not. So what I was going to mention here is worth noting. I just switched to a pretty old Windows updates. That's from January this year. And basically what's happened is when I switch, it says you've got to update the Parallels drivers in Windows that allows drag and drop and things like that to happen. So every time I do that, it hits me, you know, a few minutes and then it's got to reboot. So I'll always snapshot when I do that afterwards.
Good call. Got a couple questions in the audience. Yes, sir.
How expensive is the snapshot? I mean, is it not saving the whole? Just the
Diffs. It's not large. It's not large. Couple more.
Software gets smarter and smarter. And bigger and bigger.
Other questions?
Have you ever had any issues with your VMs in random number C for the operating system? I've experienced that the hypervisors don't provide enough entropy to the operating system to properly see the random number generator. That's especially like in cryptographic stuff, where you have the virtual machine block until it gets enough entropy to see the random number generator. As far as I know, KVM and VMware, they don't. Actually, Red Hat produced a paravirtualization book for Red Hat to actually go into KVM to get the proper entropy to do. That was for dev random. But I don't know if you guys have run into that.
Do you have a comment on that in the back?
I was just about to answer the paravirtuals to KVM. It sounds like you already do that. I got that from wrong.
Yeah.
I think that's some of the Linux space more than the desktop space. But I'm not sure what tools the gamers
I was going to comment on the topic of snapshots. So the one downside of snapshots is that you have capability and you want to run multiple instances of a machine at the same time, you cannot run two snapshots of the same machine. So there's other notion of a clone, which you can start with a snapshot and say, I want to take a clone of this. You can usually do a link clone or a full clone. That depends on how portable you want it to be. But then you can, after you have a clone, you can run two at the same time.
Another engineering use case. So we're trying to sell you guys on why you should use these things. You guys saw the system link tools. NI is coming out more and more with tools that you might want to run on a server. So if there's a tool like this, it's basically designed to run headless. You're going to run it on a server, and then you're going to connect to it with your web browser. It probably would make good sense to install create a virtual machine, and install this software on that, and then you could then run that from some other computer that's going to host it on the network.
One of the benefits of that is isolating the operating system and that software from an actual physical machine means that when whatever machine it's running on becomes obsolete, needs to be upgraded, or the fan starts making weird noises and the hard drive, it's like, looks like it's going to go. You just move that file over to another physical machine and run it, and it's good to go. Some of these environments even allow you to, like, on the fly, move it from one piece of hardware to another without it even shutting down, which is pretty slick. And then basically what they call that is basically like an appliance. That's kind of the terminology in the VM world. So in that case, System Link, you'd be running it kind of like a little appliance. And there's also libraries, repositories that a lot of VirtualBox or VMware has, where you can download various appliances people have pre-installed. For example, if you want to run, I'm just making an example, I don't know if this is the case, but like Jira or something. A company has a product that you can kind of maybe host yourself. They might give you an appliance to download and run it, and then the server software is running inside that virtualized environment.
Instead of installing it, it's replacing some individual.
Yeah, you just download it and then you start it and then it's running. And then if you don't like it, you delete that and move on. And so if you want to look around for virtual machine appliances out there, you can find all kinds of cool stuff. I think even like maybe Microsoft even gives evaluations of like beta versions of the operating system. You just download that and run it in a little virtualized environment. You don't have to install it.
Is there a LabVIEW client?
Is there a LabVIEW client?
That's the question.
I can no longer authoritatively speak to that question. I don't work for LabVIEW.
Oh, and the other piece I wanted to bring up, you touched on it, of reliability and downtime. I know we use, I believe it's called vSphere, it's part of the VMware suite, and that can manage some of the, I just added a new blade that has a whole bunch of new cores or more RAM, that can migrate you kind of without taking the computer off. It just moves it over to another processor, another core, and can manage that for you, so that if you do have to do repair on one blade versus another one of the servers, the physical hardware, that can manage that for you, so you don't go down.
We've got a couple questions out in the audience I want to make sure we get to. Yes, sir?
I just want to note on the thing about getting pre-built virtual machines. There's a site called Bitnami. And they have about 150 different virtual machines you can download that are pre-configured with things like a LAN stack or CRM software, all those sorts of things. You can go to the website, download it. You need to get a local VM for them. You can also get over to Amazon Web Services, Azure, any of those things.
That's pretty awesome.
I can use that a lot for testing software.
Questions, comments?
That segues quite into what I was going to say. So I'll say that before we go off that. Is one use case we use is a design case really, rather than putting LabVIEW on it. If you want a MySQL database or a LabVIEW database, or you can just go to Turkey Linux, you can get ISOs and do the same thing. And that's pretty much how, if you want to hack a schema of a database, it's a wonderful way to do that.
A couple other questions, John?
Yeah, I have a question about I'm wondering if any of you work in an enterprise environment where you have to deal with clones of a VM, you have to get it joined with the domains again, and usually in my case it's an IT ticket, a week at least, and it's very hard to get anything done. I'm wondering, is there anyone who have a better solution to that?
Don't connect it to the domain.
Yeah,
don't connect it to the domain.
I can't have to take resources on the...
You have to
Don't
buy
your
it.
host computer, don't share the drive.
Yeah.
You share drives.
Keep it insulated.
I can't talk to the database, I can't talk to the file server, because that's not really an option. I'm hoping that somebody else sure.
But that's not actually
So we have a kind of a split solution to that. So the first one is that most of our development is done on VMs that are stored on our computer. So my laptop has a number of virtual machines that I'll spin up, and I have two network adapters set up. So one is my hardwire connection that is going to go to a CREO is a static IP. And then I have my wireless adapter so that I can do my SDN updates and things like that. So I have it set up so that that computer isn't really on the domain, but it's sharing. I'm either using NAT or bridged from my PC. So that's the main one that I do for that, so that I can access domain files, things like that. It's actually using my wireless laptop. Then the other solution is that we do use vSphere, and we have, that's being managed by our IT group, and we have an awesome IT group. We're very lucky. And they can spin up VMs for us using vSphere and set up the credentials when we send it a ticket. And yes, it does take a day or two, but they also can help with managing that, and also retirement of said, or what do they call it, decommissioning of the virtual machine, so you don't have a bunch sitting on the server, being able to store all snapshots and things like that. So our IT group, it does manage the vSphere side of things and the larger scale. So some of the stuff you're talking about, the server side stuff. Yes. But we also do, most of the new engineers are using the desktop side, and if they want to have something where we're using a VLAN or something that is to a PLC or to a CREO or something, other hardware, and they want to set up a specific port, they tend to use the vSphere client, and IT will set that VLAN to connect to it. So that one gets a little hard because you do have to work with someone who has that credentials.
All right, there are a couple more hands that went up. Yes, sir.
Hyper-V is supplied with Microsoft totally rebuilt. And it's cheaper than hard screen. It has better connection between hardware, goes a little different hardware level. Does anybody have any experience with it?
So this is a comparison of virtualization technologies.
So there's hyper-block, VirtualBox, VMware,
Parallels.
VMware is free for one physical CPU. VMware is free for one. If you have just one physical CPU, it can be 22 cores if you want. It's going to be free.
Absolutely. Does anyone have any experience or comments like your favorite virtual machine?
That's quite the conversation. We'll get there.
I wanted to mention some other interesting kind of use cases on the advertising for why you should be using these things.
Jim, were you going to talk about comparisons? Yeah.
That's why I use it. So I've got it on the screen. It works very nicely there. They tend to be more purpose systems. I've been using it on my client as well because it's in Windows 10. And it is much more difficult than, say, VirtualBox. It doesn't have the same cloning, snapshotting capabilities, something like that. VirtualBox is the other one I've used. I don't think VMware, but VMware and VirtualBox are much more capable of that now. But I kind of wanted to try it, so I thought too. And now I'm sat here thinking I need to try and get it with VirtualBox.
Couple of comments.
On my physical machine, if I plug in a USB 2009, it shows up in that. I see my camera in that. I don't think I can do that if my VM is running on the same machine.
So I love the question. Wait, so this is the question, how does a virtual machine interact with hardware? We're going to spend probably the last 10 minutes, maybe 15 on that. Before Jim's comments, does anybody else have any other questions or comments?
I'd really like to circle back a little bit to Dimitri's comment on how do you manage updates for your hundreds of virtual machines that you've got server?
Yeah, so about that. Carefully.
Yeah, for me, it's the main thing of using virtual machines, but I'm a small truck.
For me, I don't actually do updates. I get to a known good state, and then maybe once every few months, I'll update and then start from that point again, but I'm not continually doing that. God willing, it's not a whole day. You know, maybe like once a quarter or something like that, I'll just go. Or if there's a major virus that comes out and IT messages me saying, you need to update it, okay, fine, I'll spend, yeah.
So there's one thing you do for every Windows moment. If you have a Windows Server instance, it's called a Windows Server Update Service, or WSUS. And that can actually set up groups of systems on what sort of updates they'll receive. So we'll have it where we have a few virtual machines that are set up to receive, and the latest update is on there, set back to a lower approval rate, so that way we don't get all of the latest updates on those virtual machines. And that way, as soon as they start up, they contact the server, they find out what updates they need, and just get them automatically. And the server holds all the updates, so it doesn't have to go to the Windows update and download each time. So that saves a lot of time in downloading and transferring.
So there's clearly a lot of really good information, lots of ideas and opinions. There's one thing that we've got to get to, and that is how do VMs interact with hardware? So Jim,
So I was mentioning before about the ability to create branches and stuff. One thing that I'll often do when I'm doing development of a project, and I get to the point where I build and install, right? And what I do is I either take a snapshot there, and then I jump over to my snapshot, my branch, a clean copy of Windows from where I started.
Absolutely. And
then now I'm working in there, and then I go to that shared drive that's shared with my VM and my physical machine, and I get the installer and I double click it, and I check to see, okay, it's installing these visa drivers, okay, it's installed my application, I open it up, does it work? Does it have all the drivers that's needed, etc.? Okay, no, I missed this one thing. Okay, double click back over to my development snapshot, go back, fix that in the installer, do a build, it's done. Okay, jump back over to clean installed Windows, run the installer again. Now remember, when I jump back to the clean Windows, it wiped out all of the installation that it did previously, so I'm not installing on the old installer, I'm installing on a clean copy of Windows. And so what I was describing there is basically a test process that I'm going through during my build deploy. What's interesting is some of these virtualization environments, especially like VMware, actually have programmatic APIs, as is like Amazon Web Services and stuff. I don't use this extensively, but if you get into really heavy DevOps and software unit testing and stuff, you can actually automate the spinning up of a virtual machine from a snapshot. You can then execute programmatically from a script running outside of the VM. You can execute things like download this file from here, run this file, click the OK button, go through the whole installation process. You can even then execute test environments that are clicking different buttons in Windows to actually fully test your installation process programmatically from a clean VM. It then shoots the test results to, let's say, a copy of Jenkins or something, and then it spins down and throws away that VM.
Exactly.
But that's you're doing an EXE, running an EXE.
That's the installation of whatever it is you want in whatever environment you set up.
If you want to try debugging your application with the hardware in LabVIEW,
I'm talking about a completely different use case. I'm talking about the use case that you've built something and you're wanting to validate that your built software product will install and deploy successfully in a target environment.
Very powerful use case. Very powerful.
Could I add on to that use case? Sure. Winding back to the part of our code review process is repository license. So we've done our dependencies. So we have 3 LabVIEW machines execute that thing. And one of the things in the code review is you export the repository for the project, make sure it's got everything, make sure that we run that, and that's actually just a test unit. That's good.
So, if you guys are like me, you love software. We gotta move on. We gotta move on because the hardware interaction is absolutely critical. That's right. How do VMs work with hardware? I spend the vast majority of my time in software. I do installation testing and stuff like that. NI's bread and butter is how does the software connect with the hardware?
Can I ask the one question? This is why I showed up.
Sure.
I'm a long-time user of virtual machines and very less up to the bit there on that. However, on another office we have multiple machines, virtual machines, different PCs, different vintages, etc. So issues with virtual machines. I love virtual machines, but issues with virtual machines. I'll get down to chasing this one. Devices, USB devices, USB instruments, into the virtual machine. It detects it, you finally running, get it working, and then the next day, it's gone. Has anybody seen this?
So I have a bit, and I'm seeing with the newer versions of VMware, that's gotten a lot better. There's a lot of, that seems to have improved just in the 5 years that I've been playing with it. Then making sure your tools on your client are also updated. The other piece is that I tend to struggle with the networking side if it doesn't get the adapters right. But you also, if you have a USB hard drive, if you plug that in, if whatever VM is in focus is where it initially will be installed. And so some of that, if you have to go in and say disconnect from host, in some of the options to, if your VM was closed, for example, and you already had the hard drive, the USB hard drive attached. So I feel like it has gotten a lot better from earlier with USB. Yes.
And I didn't see it again is
So we have literally got 7 minutes out. I'm really excited. A comment on that?
Yeah.
Go.
You have the issues with USB passwords with VM. They don't hold up a PC with like good SRI or split, so that you can actually, in other words, PCI password. You can take it, and if you have a spare USB controller that on your system, you can shuffle that into your VM, so the entire controller gets into your VM. At that point, the columns, new devices, whatsoever coming up that this controller, it's plugs completely forward because it's that controller not the device.
The issue I've seen as well is it seems it, but I can't use it.
Hey Chris, there's no sessions after this.
So I basically, of all these people, what you're telling me?
Just go
Okay, yeah. So,
just to answer quickly that question.
We're going to do hardware. So if you would pass the mic over to Dimitri, the question is, how does VMware interact with different kinds of hardware that you've got plugged into your machine? What are the limitations? Dimitri.
Oh, that's a good question. I was really anxious about this like 5 years ago. I'm not anxious anymore because I try using my physical PC to interact with NI hardware as much as possible. But back then, my understanding is you need to have a driver that plugs with VMware host computer in order to interact with your hardware device. And VMware out of the box has a USB driver and the network TCP stuff.
Anything that's USB or network will probably work.
Yes.
Fireware won't work probably, and of course PCI.
PCI doesn't work, but one thing I learned again back several years ago from NI is that if you're using your USB or TCP IP devices to connect to your TCP IP devices, there might be a slight shift in the timing because of the extra layer of drivers. And if you're kind of pushing your application and hardware toward the edge, this may distort the results of the application. I don't know if it's true or not anymore, so I cannot comment on that.
Anybody else? Limitations of hardware interactions?
I have a question, though. So, can I talk to a Pixie chassis on my laptop, a virtual machine running on my laptop? How do I do that?
On a laptop, I don't think you can. If you have a VM server, you can definitely put in a PCI card that communicates to the so physical, a tower.
It has a PCI bus.
Yes, you
I
can
can
buy.
over mix fee.
Yes, and you can pass through the PCI directly to the. Yes, I'm doing that for fiber optics in an card, etc. What I found is tedious is for graphics. If you are doing heavy graphics, graphic cards are hard to pass through to VMware. But PCI devices, sometimes it's hard to find. You have to find out the right driver that will work with VMware, but you can do it. For laptops, I don't have the answer.
I was just going to know that it varies a lot from virtualization package to virtualization package too. Because like Hyper-V can't access USB devices, it can't access PCI devices, anything like that. VirtualBox, which is a free one, that can do USB, but it can't do anything else.
Wow.
And the big pay packages can do things.
So Chris, can I?
Sure.
My experience with VirtualBox, the problem is I think the latest version that I used was probably 2 years ago, a year ago. I don't know if they fixed the issue. The DAC connects port, the USB ports, would keep connecting and disconnecting at weird times. So
Yeah.
actually that's why I stopped using VirtualBox and I moved to VMware for Windows machines. When I'm working on the Mac, I use parallels like Jim. And as far as connecting the hardware, what we have seen is if you have the ports physically in the computer, you can connect, except for that issue with VirtualBox.
The newer VirtualBox is a lot better with USB stability. It passes a lot more.
Yeah.
Just to note that PCI pass-through, there is a distinction between PCI Express and PCI because it's on a per bus level. Every PCI Express device gets its own bus, so you can assign individual PCI Express cards in the VM. Whereas on PCI, we allocate the entire PCI bridge over to the VM if your virtualization supports that.
So just to be clear, PCI Express possibility that could work, PCI period not going to work.
No, like my USB controller I have at home, well, not actually at home. Yeah, it has to be on PCI. It's going to be behind the bridge, PCI Express line. You have to assign that entire bridge over to all of your PCI slots.
I didn't just see much more as a best with presumably your customers don't want you to put that on the system. So why don't you just borrow their computer? The fact that you've got this other virtual machine between you and the hardware, in my mind, is just going to make life more difficult.
When you have a computer with $50,000 in Pixie hardware, you know, and then you've got your controller that's got, you know, Windows 7 on it, you're installing drivers. You know, if you have a $50,000 computer, you have a controller running Windows 7 and you're installing stuff on it, like you want to be able to test these things that you're doing to change the system configuration. You can't really have two of them and one at home.
And the other thing is often the customer has to order it through IT, and so it takes forever for them to get the PC through, and then it needs re-imaged before it can get to you. It also, having that environment of on my computer is, I might not even have the test station with me. I may be doing development and using simulation to do most of my tests. So this is really...
Oh, well, that's fair play. The question is to do with hardware. If I'm doing a hardware driver, I'm talking to the hardware, testing the hardware at that point in time. I'm probably doing it in a virtual machine.
Yeah.
Now, all the rest of it, simulation, client server, Ethernet stuff, they're brilliant. But the actual question was, how do we look at the hardware? And I say, oh, well, don't use it up.
So it is now 1:45. As a very good discussion. I think that these folks can hopefully come 5, maybe 10 minutes or so. If you guys have questions afterwards, feel free to come up and talk to us. But that is the official end of our time here. I want to make sure to respect your all's time. And I want to say thank you to our panelists for sitting on the hot seat. Yeah, so if you guys want to see what Matthias is going to show, come on up, or hang out. I just want to make sure to respect everybody's time. We're officially done. So again, thanks for coming, y'all.